that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel at a later date. In response to the COVID-19 and in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting will be broadcast at a later date through local access cable and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting. To participate remotely on Zoom, members of the public may use cell phones, tablets, or computers with audio and video capabilities. The Zoom meeting ID is, you can't use the one that's where it says that on the agenda. You have to use the ID that's down farther, which is 814-646-34196. So the correct Zoom meeting ID is contained in all that stuff down below. No participant ID is needed. Just press pound when asked. All participants who are not members of the commission or staff will be muted by the chair. Computer and app users may use the raise hand features to request to speak. To access the raise hand button, open the participant list by clicking on participants. To raise your hand, click on the button at the bottom of the participant list. The chair will call on you and unmute you. Telephone audio users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Members of the public must give their name and address before they begin speaking. Please direct all comments to the chair. If you're trouble accessing Zoom or have general questions, you can send an email to lcc@lunenburgonline.com during the meeting. Emails containing questions or comments that are to be read aloud at the meeting will be signed with full name, address, and phone number. Please be aware that if you're using video, other people will be able to see you, and that anything that is broadcast will be recorded. The agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and those that are reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. And so let's just do a roll call. Ken Jones.
I am here.
Rich Birsch.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Present.
Thank you, Katie. Carl Luck. Carl Luck.
Present.
Thank you, Carl. Jack Rabbit.
Present.
Jeff Viviano.
Here.
And I don't see Mike LaRouche tonight. We'll have to listen for the doorbell, see if he joins us later. I just have a general remark at the beginning. I read all of the usual script, but I'm not planning any public participation at all tonight. This is an evening. This is a workshop. This is an evening for the members to discuss amongst themselves and develop a draft.
Hey, actually, where you can go is Matt. Just
So
something out this afternoon.
I'm going to mute Jack since he's
Talking to Mike. Sorry.
So we call to order. So the first thing on the agenda is a discussion about the process and procedures for revising Conservation Commission land use rules. And I just wanted to say what I'm hoping we can do tonight. But, I'm open for discussion if, members have strong feelings otherwise. What I'm hoping to do tonight is to use the draft that was posted on the website, but also use the version that has the comments from the town attorney, because I think we should attend to whatever he has to say, and use that as our starting point and go through it from the beginning to the end, and develop and use straw polls all night long. Use straw polls to take and decide what language we're going to include or not include in the draft. And at the end of the night, we'll have a revised draft with track changes, because I think we owe the public a track changes document that shows, how is what we're proposing different from what is current. And then at the end, we'll have a vote at the very end to take and say, yes, we're going to take and put this draft up on the webpage for the public. And hopefully Matt has put an ad in the paper. Matt, did you do that? for next Wednesday public hearing?
He's muted.
I'm gonna ask him to unmute. Matthew?
Okay, can you hear me now, Bob?
I can.
Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't necessary to put the ad in the paper because it's a continued meeting. You guys set a time and place at the last meeting.
Okay. All right, well, all right. I wish you had put the ad, but if you didn't, I guess it is what it is at this point. So it's been well stated, lots of places that, we were going to take and do this again next week. With that, I'd like to take Jack. Let's
Sorry,
unmute Jack.
Mr. Chairman. Also, Rich created a very nice document that I don't believe was fully integrated into the, I'll call it the Carl document. That seems to have, that's the name on it. Am I missing another one? And how are we going to handle it?
Okay, so Jack, as I said, I'm going to start with the draft that was posted on the website. Okay, but I'm going to use that's the same document that we sent to the town attorney. Now the town attorney turned around and sent that back to us with comments on it.
Okay.
I want to take and use his as our starting point.
Okay.
Okay.
Where do we find that?
That is in
It is-
Matt.
They're on the cloud.
It's on the cloud.
It is on the cloud.
And I'm going to call it up on the screen, but you're welcome to call it up yourself.
Okay. Do you know the exact document name?
I believe
There are
it's
three
called-
versions on there. One that says document with track changes, one that says Rich's proposal, and one that says Carl's document.
But there should be one on there that says draft conservation land use policy draft 11/18/20 with track changes, AJC edits,
Yeah.
12/2/20.
Gotcha. Got it.
Find it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep. I don't see any comments from the attorney, though.
GC. I'm sorry.
If you take and you scroll
Mr.
down to page 3, you'll see a comment from the attorney. Did you find it, Jeff?
To the folder that says comments from Adam Costa.
Okay, Kyle, you had your hand up.
Mr. Chairman, I like the process, everything you said. I would just, one minor thing, just because maybe nobody knows, the document that I sent in is the document you're referring to with the legal changes. That's the one I used. And I simply made comments. I didn't make any changes to the document.
Yeah, but you sent it out as a
So-
PDF, Carl, so.
Yeah, it's a PDF. I understand. You were
And
talking
so
about
I'm
using
counting
Word.
on you all night long, Carl, to take, every time we come to something, to take and bring up whatever your comment was, and we can deal with it.
Okay, so I'm just saying, and if you document, it might be quicker because you'll see automatically the additional comment I have, and then I have no other comments than that, so we can elaborate as necessary. But
Except that I can't use that as the basis, because we're going to do this live to develop a revised document using track changes, for sharing with the public. The only thing, like Jack pointed out, that Rich developed this great document, which doesn't really reference it. We could take a look at his document first and then go through it, or we could take and count on Rich as we go through the existing to bring it up. Rich, do you have a preference one way or the other?
No, whatever way the group feels. I had more or less, like we spoke today, submitted mine as a different way to go about it, rather than trying to incorporate what I wrote into the current regulation policy. But we could certainly take and add portions of it to it as if people would rather.
Well, I believe that we owe the public something that shows how what we're proposing is different from what we have now.
Oh, I agree.
And And so that's why I'm proposing that we go through and do the track changes. Carl, I'm gonna lower your hand because it's distracting me.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm a distractible guy. So, so let me share my screen. And where is it? We're gonna do screen 2. Can you guys see this, the document now?
Mhm.
All right. What do you know? And so, the original document changed regulation to policy, but I think we should leave it as regulations because Richard rightly pointed out that we are able to pass regulations, and the town attorney did confirm that. So I'm going to reject this insertion and reject the deletion of so it'll stay, whoops, and reject the S. So it'll stay land use regulations. Let's go to page 2. Anybody else have any comments on Rich did it a little differently. He took in, he had, he had a statement at the beginning about who enforced this, who enforced the land use regulations. Let's take a look at what Rich said. Let's do single page view. One page. Let's go to 100. Oh, I was wrong. Never mind. Okay, let's go back to permitted activities. So I'm suggesting that we steal from Rich's excellent work here and insert 2 definitions. One definition is or though we can do it the way it is. It's like the following activities are on any land in the care and custody and control of the Conservation Commissioner or otherwise owned by the town of Lunenburg for conservation purposes, conservation lands. Is everyone good with that for a definition of, what lands are, impacted by these regulations?
Yes.
Yeah, as I go through, if I'm go fast, don't feel like, feel free to just speak out. Okay.
Oh, Bob?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Rich, prior to that section 1,
Yep.
he had a nice outline, kind of a forward, lands under custody care, but his majority of the public lands were acquired. He's trying to explain, and Rich, I'm explaining you, so I don't know if I'm doing the right job, but basically you put that as a forward to explain where the lands came from. And I don't know if you want to put that in the front or where do you want to stick it, Rich?
The reason I had put it there was just a preamble to explain what the lands are, what they should, how they came to be acquired, and under what jurisdiction we put forth our control of it. I mean, a lot of times people think that we may be omnipotent as to what we can't allow on these properties.
Right.
I mean, what we can allow is actually very limited, just in CMR 301, CMR 5.02, the description of passive recreation.
Rich, I found that
So for the
preamble.
majority of the lands, that's all of the activities that we can allow. So when people come forth with why can't we allow ATVs? Why can't we allow four-wheeling, things like that? But they're not permitted under state law. We don't have the authority to generally allow those purposes. So it's just to kind of outline our authority and the lands that we have currently that will be subject to the regulations.
So
Valuable, Rich.
what I've pasted here is the definition of passive outdoor recreation. Stolen from Rich, who got it from the regulations that talk about the park grant and the land grant, two different grant programs. And Mike LaRouche. Mike is with us now.
He made it.
But I've made two changes to this to it. Okay, so let's go through it. The passive outdoor recreation is any outdoor activity that occurs in a natural setting with minimum disturbance of the natural and cultural resources that is consistent with quiet enjoyment of the land, including but not limited to hiking, nature study, outdoor education, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, horseback riding, trail bicycling, hunting, fishing, picnicking, canoeing, ice skating. I added geocaching and letterboxing because that's not in the original definition, and we were contemplating adding that, but that's just my suggestion. And I added, if you take a look at the original definition from the regs, it talks about snowmobiling may be allowed if the local commission deems it acceptable, or some words like that. So I put in snowmobiling only on trails specifically marked for use by snowmobiles as approved by the commission, community gardening in existing fields, swimming in a natural water body with minimal site development, or informal sports activities on an open natural field. And then it goes on, and then I eliminated something about, there was some language in there about what you have to do to be eligible for the grant, which doesn't really apply to these regs. And I added this stuff down the bottom here about the other stuff you can put on conservation lands and still be appropriate. How do people feel about this? Let's first of all ask Rich, because I'm stealing from his document. Rich, what are your thoughts on this?
My only feeling would be where I took it directly from the regulation is to have it stated as it is in the regulation, because that is the exact definition of all allowable activities on these properties.
Well,
and we can add geocaching. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend changing the definition of snowmobiling.
Okay. So let me.
Because at that point, if we have the way I had written my proposal was,
Yep.
This is everything that can be allowed.
Yep.
Then we can work backwards from there to try to define some of the activities more in detail if needed.
Yep.
So you've kind of done both. You've taken the maximum allowed on the property, and then you've already started to detail some of the activities, which I think should be done in two separate spots.
Okay.
Myself, but
all right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I agree with Richard. I think the way Richard has it is better, including that first statement that, that is, and ties it to the regulation. Because the very first sentence, I think, is important, that unless further needs regulations or permitted further needs regulations. So as not to try to put the whole regulation into this little paragraph here, but keep it clean. This is the regulation we use to guide us as passive regulation. So I like it the way Richard has it.
I would agree as well.
First sentence,
All right,
from the
so
beginning.
that's what I'm coming back. So this is exactly from the regulation. So I'm suggesting that we make one change here. And put the geocaching letterboxing in, unless people are opposed to that, because they want it exactly like in the regulation. because my problem with this is, this sentence here, for purposes of eligibility and reimbursement under these regulations. It's like, what's that doing there in our, in our land use regulation? I mean, we're not, I don't know why we're including that phrase in our own land use regulations.
To me, Mr. Chairman, we're taking the direct quote from 301 CMR 5.02 and inserting it into our regulation, just as a point of reference. And I think, if we want to talk about other things down below, we could add geocaching in down below.
So then what I would suggest that we do, if that's, the other people agree with Ken, and it sounds like, based on what I've heard, that people like it the way it is. What I would suggest then is that we take and we say passive outdoor recreation is defined in CMR blah 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 as, and then have this paragraph.
I think if you just take that paragraph right above where Rich put that in his document, that would kind of take care of that.
All right. Well, I'm going to go over to Rich's document.
Yeah. Because the other thing that it says is, in that first sentence or second sentence, it says, but not limited to all of those activities. So, I mean, to me, geocaching and letterboxing falls into that not limited to by those other activities.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So when,
At least that explains where it came from. Yeah.
Right.
yep. So is this the chat paragraph you're referring to when you say unless restricted in these this
Yes.
paragraph here?
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
All right. So let's copy that. And I see what you've done here, Rich.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just regarding that, if we, in that sentence you just put in, unless restricted further in these regulations, if we said unless restricted further or modified to include others, because keeping this clean, the definition in the regulation is great, but I'm trying to put a couple words that say, or we can, in addition to that, so we could add a line below this that says, in addition to that, geocaching or whatever the things you said, so get those into here under permitted uses, but not tampering with the CMR.
I think if you read that, Carl, if you read the CMR in that first sentence, it says, with the quiet enjoyment of the land, including but not limited to. So in the definition.
Right, but I'm
So
trying
I don't
to
think, to me, we don't. See, this goes back to the whole thing where we list all the things that we can do. Why don't we just list the things that you can't do?
Exactly.
Like,
Yep.
I mean, I don't think we should say, all right, well, you can do this and you can do this and you can do this. Why can't we just say, well, don't do this, this, and this? Because it's going to be, to me, it's going to be a lot easier.
That's okay, different direction. Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just trying to see how we would bring visibility to the items Bob wanted to add without contaminating the regulation language.
Could always add whatever additional items such as, and list Bob's.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we go down further, there's all the other activities that we've already either we're going to limit or we're not going to limit, or so we need to just go down further. I think we can add that in.
Yeah.
I think so.
Right.
I just don't think we can ever list all the things you can't do in a conservation land. I don't think you can ever get there. And if
So
someone,
but on the same hand, why should we try to say what you can do? Like you can't do anything
Or-
illegal, right?
Yeah.
But anything that's legal, that's, within the norms of society, you should be able to do.
Agreed.
So, I don't know.
No, Ken, I don't know if we can list all the things they can imagine they can do, and I'm pretty confident we can never imagine all the things they can't do, leaving breadcrumbs in the trail.
I'm happy with the list of activities, in the definition of passive outdoor recreation, with the exception of geocaching and letterboxing, because, you could make an argument about whether or not that's passive or not. I think that's a minimum disturbance of the natural and cultural resources, because usually you don't even know the thing is there unless you have the guide to look inside the stump or whatever.
So why don't you just address that right at the end of the definition? So you're not technically changing the definition, just put a star note at the bottom and just add it in.
And
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
so then,
And that way, at least it covers that.
Yeah.
then do we want to take and get rid of this entire list of stuff that, because it's repetitive?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
I guess, if we're going to change the whole thing, then to me, I like the format that Rich has.
Yeah.
Instead of,
Yeah.
So, I guess we're essentially sort of going the direction of what Rich's looks like. So I don't know if it's easier to just import a whole new document or to track changes on this one.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Where we are referencing particular legal documents, I think in Rich's preamble, he kind of takes us to it in accordance with MGL Chapter 40, Section 80. Would that make sense then to put that in the very, very beginning versus treat it as a separate preamble? Lands under custody and care?
Yeah, I was thinking that would make sense to put that at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm sure Rich agrees with us.
It's pretty quiet.
He is quiet.
Let me find.
I'm in favor of just substituting my version with the existing version, but everybody else should have their opinion as well.
Honestly, I thought it was great. It's short, it's to the point, and
Yep.
it addresses a lot of the things that we're doing, and I think it's much more organized. Yeah.
It's concise.
Yep.
But I do like the fact that we
Wait,
put something
no,
in the end.
let's do a straw poll on that. Ken, how do you feel about that?
I stepped away for 1 second. We're talking about whether we want to use Rich's document as a base or the existing document.
Yeah. How do you feel? It's like,
I think that the direction I'm leaning is that we use the document that Rich provided as the base for our new regulations, and we make changes, as we see fit to that document.
okay. Rich, I think I know how you feel. Katie, how do you feel about it?
I agree with Ken. I think Rich's did a great job. It's really streamlined, so I think we should use his.
Carl?
It's a very different document. I think there's a lot in here that we should use. But I tend to like, from the public point of view, of updating the current document so people see what the changes are. I also get a little concerned. Rich's document is nice and concise, but it doesn't really address a lot of the issues that that legal had. With how people get permission, and what they get permission for, how they do it. The insurance liabilities. There's an awful lot in the base document that I'm afraid we're gonna lose if we do that. So I would rather take, like we just did, what we like in Richard's document, which is a lot, and transport it into the other documents, so that we still have to proceed through every paragraph of the other document and decide whether we like that or not, and what the legal's input was. So I'm afraid we're going to we'll end up with a nice commitment, but it'll have a lot of gaps that we were trying to close in the old document.
Jack, how do you feel about it?
Well, I like being concise, believe it or not, and I do like the front end. But at the same time, Bob, and Carl's point, there are some things that we are listing there that say these things can include, and I liked some of the inclusion, and the horseback riding and things like that. I think that should conceivably sit at the second half of this section 1, and the geocaching, of course. I don't know how Dinosaur Trail works, but I think that's geocaching. So, Bob, you know what I mean on Dinosaur Trail.
I'm not quite sure where you stand on this, Jack.
Okay, where I stand is I like having the whole front end. I like what Carl's got. I think we should. I mean, Rich has got. I think it needs to sit in the front end of this whole section 1, and in the tail end of section 1, we should pick up these can include the following kinds of activities and put those back in. So it'll satisfy the issue of it's recognizable by the public, and it gets us back to following the law in terms of how these things can be managed. So I like both, but I certainly want to see Rich's in the front end, and I'd like to see the prior stuff towards the back. Did that help? Probably not. But
Jeff, how do you feel about it?
I think if we use Rich's as kind of the boilerplate and then reference the older document, maybe drag some of that into Rich's, I think it would be easier.
Mike, how do you feel about it?
Does it have to be written in this font, or is that just the draft that I'm looking at?
We can write it in any font we want.
Okay, it just seems like not really professional at this point, but maybe it's going to get cleaned up in the draft. But I certainly like the points you've all been bringing up, in as much as the basic document and then putting some examples at the end just to help people out, because it sounds like those things were not in the original document.
Sure.
Yeah. I think if we're going to go with Rich's document, I don't think we're going to be, my personal feeling is if we're going to go with Rich's document, we have to prepare a different document for the public that explains how is Rich's document different from the original, because we're not going to be able to give them, what changes have been made.
Can't we just post both documents and say this is the old and this is the new?
Yeah, we can post both documents, but I think we should attempt to take and describe what the differences are, and I would advocate that we not have a public hearing on this on the 20th, because I don't think we'll be ready to do that by then. I think we're going to need more iterations, passes at it, before it's ready for, public viewing and stuff.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to look ahead here a little bit and look at the two documents. And I think what happens is Rich's is a great document for what you can and can't do. But the regulation we have has important information about if you want to camp overnight, how do you do that? It tells you how to do that, what permissions and what and if you want to cut things, so the current regulation is not only what you can and can't do, but how you do it when it's not by right. And if you do it, what liabilities you need to cover, and it's more like a regulation, than it is sort of guidance policy. So we all like high level things, but the devil's always in the detail. When people want to do something, the people as well as the commission who changes, should have a good document that guides them how, if you're going to have an event, what do you need to do? And that's where the legal input and what do you need who do you get permission from? What kind of, what do you need from police? What do you need from fire? What do whoever. So I'm just, if we can start dragging that over to Richard's document, but I'm afraid that it's really necessary to have a good functioning regulation that people can use as a tool.
I guess I
Mr.
kind of
Chair.
disagree with that.
If I might,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair.
Rich.
Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah.
Rich.
So the way I did try to write this, as opposed to just having a list of rules that you just kind of have to follow down, I did try to get a template in place so that we would start with permitted uses. The maximum permitted use is the 301 CMR 5.02. From there, it starts with starting to add some detail to the uses and some listings of what you can't do on the property. I certainly didn't make this an all-encompassing document with all of the suggestions and everybody's idea of changes from the old regulation, but it was just more to at least get started and putting it in some semblance of order. So, somebody reads, these are the lands that the Conservation Commission has. These are the rights and authorities the commission has to dictate what is allowed on the property, followed by the maximum definition of what is allowed on the property. Then as we go down in the permitted uses, section 1 are any deviations from that maximum definition: access, alteration, motorized vehicles, firearms, commercial organizing. And of course, last but not least, the commission shall reserve the right to amend, restrict, or otherwise alter the use set forth. Then we go to section 2, and I tried to keep them in line. So section 1.1 was an activity that was not allowed if there was to be an exception to that. Section 2.1 would tell you how to do it. So again, it's not inclusive of everything that was in the original regulation or any of the changes, but there's absolutely no reason why we can't bring that additional information, if we so require, into the outline that I've presented. So I think that it's not that one is not supposed to take place of the other. It's more of just the template itself, as Jeff has said. And then if we need to add extra detail to it, there's certainly ample opportunity, and there's more than enough paper in the office to add as many details and exemptions and things like that we want to put in. But it was more just to structure it a little bit better, so it just didn't become an unruly list of rules that we just keep adding another rule and another rule and another rule.
Thank you, Richard. That's much better. So as we go through, we should go look at the base document and see if we've covered it or not, or if we need to or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
over or not.
if there's additional needed, like for an exemption for an overnight activity, overnight camping must be approved by Lunenburg Police Department, and if open fires are requested by Lunenburg Fire Department prior to any review by the commission. I mean, we can certainly add detail to that in here if necessary. If they're coming to the commission, they should be contacting the administrator and setting up an appointment to come before us. There was a lot of talk of dates and timeframes and things like that in the old regulations that just aren't realistic. I mean, to require a 7-day notice prior is nowhere near enough time, depending on the time of year. Sometimes it's enough, sometimes it's not. So, I mean, it just kind of cleans it up a little bit. But we can certainly add detail to it as needed.
Mhm.
That was always my intent, was to add detail and additional things if people wanted to.
Speaking for myself, if we're going to use Rich as our template, then what I suggest we do is go through Rich's template tonight, and see how we feel about Rich's template, and then give people time to take and compare Rich's template to our present regulations, and have another session in the future where we talk about what do we want to bring into Rich's template from our present regulations, unless people think we can do that tonight. But I advocate that we start with Rich's template and go through Rich's template from start to finish, if that's the way people want to go.
I would agree with that, Bob.
Yeah, I think Rich's is a good white paper to start with. We just keep augmenting that based on what we know from our past regulations. I think that's perfectly good strategy.
Ken, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's fine with me, if that's how you want to do it. I mean, I think we could hash it out tonight, but if we need
Yep.
to take another night, that's fine.
Rich, how do you feel about that? If we start
Yeah,
with
well,
yours,
let's start item by item and see how it progresses. I mean, I don't think there, other than one or two issues, most of the issues with previous regulation, that we have a consensus on what we should be doing moving forward. So
Yeah.
most of the arguing's
Plus-
over. It's just in the wordsmithing.
plus, I'm going to want to send this off to the town council again. Because it's a very different document from the original one. So I'm going to want to send it off to town council again before we take any votes on it. Katie, how do you feel about that? Going through Rich's document tonight is our starting point, and then going back afterwards to see, what else do we want to add in?
I'd agree with that. I think we should do that.
Carl?
Yeah, I agree. We'll see how we go. I would tend to finish that and then let us digest it for a week or so and do our sanity checks and then come around again.
Jack?
I'm in total agreement.
Jeff?
Let's use it a white. Let's use Rich's stuff. Go through it.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think almost everything is addressed in Rich's document. I think it would go a lot quicker than you think. So, yeah.
Okay. Mike LaRouche?
Yes, I'll go along with this. I'm assuming we're looking at the red document. That's Rich's document.
Okay, so first of all, let me make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So let's screen share this thing. So here's Rich's document.
Okay.
So first thing I'm going to do is put in
First page.
yeah, the first page. Go back and steal the cover from the other one.
I mean, the cover is really not
Yep.
super important part of the document.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm
Makes
just
it look pretty.
leaving it that way. And it could be, we'll be changing that too. So
For clarity, we're taking the entire document, including the upfront language, which I think is very good. The lands under custody, and
yeah.
we're including all that. Well, I just can't see it that well.
So no, we don't need that extra page break. Delete. So here we have Rich's document. So take us through it, Rich. It's your document. Take us through.
So we start with the opening. Lands under the custody, care, and control of the Lunenburg Conservation Commission are public lands owned by the town of Lunenburg for the enjoyment of all. Basically, just a description of the lands. The majority of these public lands were acquired with the help of the land acquisition or local acquisition for land diversity grant program through the Division of Conservation Services. All properties for which grant assistance is provided will become permanently protected open space under Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, dedicated to the conservation passive recreational purposes in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C. All properties must be open for the public and appropriate passive recreation use.
And so I would take, this looks like you copied it directly.
Pretty much.
I would like to take out the word will, so it just says all properties for which grant assistance was provided. Because this is like, it says it were acquired.
Okay.
Yeah, I think all properties, which were acquired through this grant are permanently protected or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, just not all parcels of property were acquired under the Conservation Commission control by the land grant program. So I just
Right.
wanted to make sure that that was spelled out, that not all properties fall into Article 97. But all properties under the care, custody, and control of conservation do fall under our authority under Chapter 40, Section 8C.
I thought that any property that shows in the deed that it's under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission falls under Article 97.
I don't believe it does, but I could be mistaken.
Actually, it does. If the deed says under the control of the Conservation Commission, or if the deed states that the land was obtained for conservation purposes, automatically falls under the protection of Article 97.
All right, I stand corrected.
And so, because if you take and you look at the original thing, there's a definition of conservation land that says it must be in the deed. That it's under the, that it's in for conservation. And that's one of the things I'm working to address through the open space committee. Like, there are parcels that the assessor's database says are assigned to conservation, and there's no deed that says that. So as far as I'm concerned, they're not really conservation lands. So, until we get a deed that says they are. Most of those are like tax title properties and stuff. But anyway, I digress. So the only reason I bring that up is maybe we want to say something somewhere up here about that it's got to be in the deed that it belongs to the Conservation Commission or assigned to the Conservation Commission. There's got to be something in the land registry, or we could not.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
guess,
technically, Bob, if the deed doesn't list under the custody, care, and control of the Conservation Commission, these regulations I don't think are going to apply.
Okay.
Because technically then at that stage, the land is not under our
Yep.
custody and control.
Yeah, first
Yeah.
sentence takes care of that.
Keep going.
Oh, hold on, let me go back. Where was I?
Mr. Rich, just a question.
Yeah.
If the deed wasn't directed to us, and the selectmen have chosen to put this under our wing, which one holds the water? I mean, is it the Conservation Commission?
Jack, I'll answer that. If the selectmen direct it, say like these two properties we did at the last town meeting,
Yeah,
there has to be a new deed filed with the registry of deeds for it to be effective. Otherwise, it doesn't count.
okay, you answered. Thank you, Bob.
and that would take a town meeting vote.
Yep.
Okay.
All
So-
right. So moving forward, the Lunenburg Conservation Commission under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C, may adopt rules and regulations governing the use of the land and waters under its control, which is
Perfect.
pretty self-explanatory. Please notify Conservation Administrator or Lunenburg Police to report violations to these regulations. And we have both phone numbers on the front cover currently. The only thing I'd recommend is putting the office address on there as well on the front cover.
Okay. Note to. All right. I'll write that down and I'll do that later.
Okay. And we've pretty much gone through the permitted use unless restricted further in these regulations. All lands under the custody, care, and control of Lunenburg Conservation Commission shall be open to the general public for passive recreation as described in. I think you read through that. So that is the maximum allowed usage on the property, is the passive recreation definition.
I mean, I think, going back to what everybody else was talking about before, though, I think our out is that not limited to, so we can add other things in there.
Yes, yep, yeah, and it says not limited to, I mean, those are some of the major ones. Basically any outdoor activity
Right.
that occurs in a natural setting with minimum disturbance.
Well, that'll give us coverage for the snowmobiles then. with the exception of the noise. The fact that snowmobiles do not cause the trails to deteriorate.
Well, it talks about snowmobiles down below anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be a sticking
So
point.
Rich, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So somewhere farther down in this document, do you have, is there someplace where we could logically add in geocaching and letterboxing, or should it go right after this? Or should we say that we allow all these, that we consider geocaching and letterboxing passive?
I mean, what is geocaching? It doesn't disturb the natural setting. It doesn't disturb the cultural resources. So I don't know why it would need its own carve out.
I
do
make
agree
a
with Ken,
suggestion?
because the problem is you keep adding things that you can do that clearly fall under the definition. Then you're going to start with yoga, yodeling. I mean, it just, no offense to Jack Rabbit, but you get somebody like Jack Rabbit that just likes to throw that 1 in a million that might happen out there. And I mean, all of a sudden this thing's 35 pages long with all of the things that you can do, which are all covered under the first statement. So if it doesn't say you can't do it, I'm not sure why we would add it as you can do it.
Is geocaching littering?
I think I'm strongly in favor of allowing geocaching.
Too.
And I think we need to explicitly say it.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Can we put an asterisk or a plus sign or some sort of delineation in right next to passive outdoor recreation, asterisk down below? For the purposes of this document or regulation, the LCC considers geocaching and whatever to be passive recreation.
I like that. How do other people feel about that?
You could also just add it on to 1.2 later on in the document.
Yeah, that would be fine too.
I like that better.
Because there's no alteration or disturbance of these properties is allowed, and then you can just add a sentence in to allow that.
Oh,
The other
So
question.
it's
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
it's just more organized. This, if you put a star there, then I think it fits better on, under that 1.2.
Yeah, because you are sort of adding something when you're geocaching. You're adding the cache, so that
Exactly.
would be an exemption for that.
So that's the section that kind of identifies that.
Okay, I think that's a good idea.
Mr. Chairman, one of the ways to get around this a little bit, I like the asterisks, is when you create a formal document, you're trying to keep it from getting too big. What you do is you create an addendum, and this is the asterisk addendum 1. And then you create a separate page later on that says these activities are generally perceived as positive, or,
Jack, we already solved the problem.
All right, moving
Yeah.
forward.
That's fine. I'm just offering another.
Mr. Chairman, I have a use that's in the base document, but we haven't talked about, and it's dog walking. And the only reason I bring it up is because it shows up in several different places, in the document. So, how
I
control of
think-
it, picking up the feces. So do we need to mention dog walking as a allowed usage, or just have that down below?
I think we should take that up later under restrictions. Because I think it's allowed, but I think, we need to have something about picking up dog poop and having control of your dog, or having your dog on a leash, or whatever we decide.
Yeah, that's my question. If we can cover it without talking about it as a use, but below, then that's great. As long as we don't miss those are the two issues: the control and the feces.
Go ahead, Rich.
Right, so I started out with the hours of operation. I know Bob, in the first statement, in the first sentence we had was open to all at all times, but then the next line right after that said that any overnight usage must be approved. So it was kind of contradictive to me. The only reason I did think that we should perhaps put in some sort of hours that people shouldn't be on the property without permission was my own experience. Of course, I preface that with, I think that the passive recreation description is all that's needed for use of this property. I don't think we need to do any more regulations on it at all. But when I went to the planning board for my self-storage facility, I went for 24-hour access to the facility and was told by several members that if people are in there after hours, they're probably people that you don't want to have on your property anyways. So that's why I kind of thought that that may be more of the townspeople's thought, but I'm open to just having it 24-hour access. But
well, first of all, I got several things to say about this. Number one, we've had 24-hour access forever, as far as I know, and to my knowledge, we have no reported problems with 24-hour access. Number two, in the wintertime, you have the sunset occurs at 4:30. People don't even get home from work until 5:30, so if you want to go mountain biking or trail running, and I see trail runners out there at night with their headlights on, and I'm out there at night, I got self-interest here with my headlights on, that would preclude that. And three, that'll impact the snowmobilers. Ken?
I agree with you, Bob. I think that, I'm not out there mountain biking or running at night because I don't run. But I think, for stargazers, hikers, even dog walkers and things like that, I think that shouldn't be restricted. If you want to go out stargazing, you shouldn't need the administrator's permission. It should be by right.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'd say we just take 2.1 from the previous document and just substitute that in here where it says hours of operation. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the conservation land at no charge at any time.
Okay, I'm going to work on doing that unless I hear objection from anyone. It'll take me a minute. I apologize. What is it? 2. Here we go.
1.1.
Okay, and I'm going to include in this the lawyer's comment where he says, whoops. Controls. Well, I got to do this. Keep just the text. Hours of operation. Everyone's welcome to enjoy constellations that subject to other provisions of this policy. And that addresses Rich's thing about if you want to go overnight, of these regulations. He was thinking it was of these regulations. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. 1.2, Rich.
No alteration or disturbance of these properties is allowed. There is to be no digging, planting, excavating, signage, littering, trail creation, maintenance, or cutting, removal of vegetation unless exempted further in these regulations.
Okay.
And if we were to consider geocaching a possible form of littering or alteration, 2.2, we would put the exemption of geocaching and storing of geocache materials on site. That would be an exemption to this.
It's enough to put it in 1.2. I don't know if we need to put it in twice.
Well, I'm just voicing that I think if we're going to exempt geocaching as a use, as a right, we should put it in the exemptions which would be 2.2.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, well, let's go down and look at 2.2.
Point two, any requests to allow alteration, disturbance, maintenance, or improvements to these properties must be reviewed by the commission prior to any activity. Then we would have 2.21, which is the conservation trail and stewardship program you had discussed. So
Yeah.
then 2.2.2 would be for the purposes of this regulation, geocaching. And the storage of geocache materials is exempt under these regulations. Or you would use another phrase too, geocaching and some other
Letterboxing.
letterboxing, yep. And the storage of those materials on site is exempt.
A question for the group.
Go ahead.
If we're, we take the trail, we go out, and honestly, in the past, every so often I brought a pair of loppers, take some of the branches down off the trail itself, or for that matter, during the winter, I'll bring loppers if something big has fallen across it. Now all of a sudden I'm doing a little bit of maintenance, and I'm wondering if we want to just clarify a little bit, but I don't know of a safe way to try and do that. I just know it happens. People do maintenance on our trails for us, and not just the snow riders.
Well, let's wait till we come back to this. Okay, let's go back to where we were.
Okay.
All right.
1.3, no motorized vehicles are allowed on these properties with the exception of municipally owned vehicles or emergency vehicles unless exempted further in these regulations.
And so, Rich,
So 2.3 is an exemption. Snowmobile use is permitted only on trails specifically marked for use by snowmobiles as approved by the commission. Snowmobiles must have a valid registration in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
yep. And how about do you take and do you allow people to bring stuff on with the permission of with permission? It's like I'm not going to be able to get all these signposts up out there unless we have, when we put up the bridge on the Lane property,
Yeah,
there was tons of vehicles that drove down there with all those materials to put up the
Yeah.
sharpened tier bridge. And I don't see anything in here that would allow us to take and say, oh, you're going to do these good things, we're going to allow you to bring an ATV or a pickup truck down there.
so then my suggestion would be to add that to the conservation land and trail stewardship.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of where I envisioned most all of the maintenance programs that we would open up to the public.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, in relationship to section 2.3, would we want to require a SAM pass?
Jack,
It's basically an insurance policy. They carry insurance policies.
I understand that, Jack, but let's wait till we get down there. Let's go back to
We're just
1.3.
Just to that, Mr. Chair, I believe that you have to have a SAM pass as part of the valid registration process in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I don't believe you can ride a snowmobile in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts without a SAM pass. So that's part of the registration process.
Rich, I know that you sell them separately as part of the club. They'll come back and they'll sell that, and I've never seen it associated with the registration.
Yeah, I will look again, but I'm pretty sure that you have to have a SAM pass to ride.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
and it was just more, if that's the case, it would just be more of why would we duplicate the statement, but I will check while Bob's typing.
Thank you. Rich. So farther on down, we need something for motor vehicles under exemptions. No use of firearms, explosives are allowed in these properties pursuant to Lunenburg Town bylaw unless exempted further by these regulations. I'm assuming you're somewhere farther down, Rich, you exempt firearms for hunting.
2.4.
Okay, all right. No commercial organized activities unless exempted further in these regulations. Okay. Anybody have any questions about 1.3, 1.4, 1.5? Oh, there is 1.01. What happened to 1.6?
Oh, I guess I skipped numbers.
That's like something I would do.
Well, we can always add a 1.6 if there's something that we have a use or we're looking
We'll
to.
do that later.
Yep.
Exemptions. Commission reserves the right to exempt any, to permit any on a case-by-case basis. Why do we want overnight camping approved by the Lunenburg Police Department?
I believe that was in the prior regulation.
Was
If
it?
I
I'm
think it
correct.
was.
What's
I
that?
think you're right.
Yeah, I think it was too. I guess I agree. I don't know why it needs to be approved by the police department, but
Yeah, that was just
Or-
an item I carried over.
No. Well, can the open fires have to be approved by the Lunenburg Fire Department? I'm assuming so. Yes, no, maybe?
yeah, cooking fires should be approved. Or at least, we need to be notified of it. And I think, to notify the police as a courtesy, I think that's appropriate so they know that there's people out there. But I don't necessarily think it needs to get approved by them.
Well,
I
but
believe that's why it was initially put in there, was to encourage notification of the police department.
and so then I'd rather have it say notification and overnight camping must be approved by the by the commission or by the administrator.
think-
Overnight camping was by the commission.
I think it should be approved by the commission.
Yeah,
Yeah, because that was a full group. I mean, I did put it out there individual. So if you had just a couple people going out for star viewing or wildlife viewing, a small activity of a few people could go through the administrator. I didn't have an issue with that, depending on how the commission feels.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd be
I
fine
think
with
the
that
only
too.
time you probably wanted to go through the office is if you had a designated camping area. So you had areas that were like reserved, like plots, and then those plots would have to would have to go into the office as a routine to be reserved. But that creates a lot of complications. So I think just having it like you have it and having it go to the commission is definitely the better approach.
What does this
And the
mean?
other thing we can always do, and we don't have to put it in the regulations, but we can have an overnight application that Matt can hand out when somebody inquires about overnight activities.
Right.
Yeah, that would
And
be a
that's
good
something
idea.
that can be up to date, that he can review with any applicant.
So that I would think then we would take and prepare an overnight activity application to put at the end of the as a part of the regulations at the end.
No, we certainly can.
Mr. Chair, this is one of those areas that I'm looking at the base document.
Yep.
Just so we understand what we're dropping out. The base document, does it need permissions to be submitted to the Conservation Commission 7 days, this is where Richard's saying 7 calendar days before the meeting at which will be considered. And it says the written permission shall be carried by the person in charge of the event at all times during the event. Overnight camping groups must have an adult in charge. And then it goes into the police and fire and everything we talked about.
I don't think any of
Right
that's
now,
necessary, is my personal feeling. I mean, Rich didn't include any of these day timelines. You know,
Yeah,
I don't think,
that's my point.
I don't think they add anything because
So you don't, you don't feel we need an adult in charge?
Well, we'd have to approve it, so
they have to approve it.
we wouldn't approve kids staying out in the
But,
woods.
but the subject may not come up if it's not in the regulation.
I have more faith in the commissioners than that, Carl.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to just give blanket approval. I mean, that's why we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis like we do everything else.
Exactly.
If we're gonna have the police notified, should we put the burden on the administrator? Should we put the burden on the applicant? It's like, how do we know if the applicant does it?
Yeah, the previous document said must notify the chief of police and the commission of exact dates and occupancy and contact information of the accompanying responsible adult. So, and it says
Well-
evidence of notice to the police must be provided to the commission. So,
Well, the other way you could approach it is if the commission is going to do grantings of overnight use at a meeting,
Yep,
and you're going to come up with an application form
yep,
that I would hand out and fill, with the applicant that would be presented to you guys,
yep.
then an actual permit based on the application should be issued. And then I could send copies to the police and fire department of that
Yeah.
permit.
Could I ask a question about that?
Go ahead.
Could that be something we put on the e-permitting online, and then it could get sent to the police chief automatically like it does with other stuff in town?
Yeah, you'd have to create a separate category, but I suppose it's possible.
So I think the application form is important. I assume we'll have that addendum or whatever attachment that is to this regulation when we approve it.
So overnight camping must have prior approval by the commission. Only that's not how you spell approval. The police department will be notified. To me, we need to take and do some more work here, develop an application, and put stuff on the application, not necessarily in the regs.
Good.
Because I mean, that application form doesn't necessarily have to be included with these regulations, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And I mean, I guess going back to this, I mean, it's a very infrequent thing. It used to be more frequent, but I don't think we've had anybody camp on Conservation Commission land since I can remember.
Yeah, I understand from Tim Murphy that the Boy Scouts used to routinely camp out there in the large town forest until the Gallagher house went up. So,
Yep, that is true. Somebody get the phone.
that's my daughter, and that's
Oh, that's hard to mute. You can't.
so if we're going to write a document, I think we should just address all this on the document and just say overnight camping is approved. And somehow state that you just need to fill out the document, and the document will describe everything you need to do.
Okay,
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree with that as long as we have the document when we approve the,
okay.
I don't think it has to be part of this regulation though. Something on file.
As infrequent as the request is.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really happen that much and
What,
make it pretty streamlined.
Rich, what did you have in mind when you said evening group activities must be reviewed for approval by the commission? What does that mean?
Again, I think that we have to be a little careful because organized activities are sometimes not considered passive recreation. So if you had a group of, astronomers that wanted to go out and watch a comet, if you had 30 people that wanted to use the parking lot and set up telescopes, an activity that's organized like that, should come before the commission just for a review so we know what's going on, so that we know how many people are out there, how they're getting out there, how they're using the land.
I guess the only
You could
thing I
have a
would have to,
snowmobile poker run. It's basically, organized group activities that are using the public lands.
but we're talking about overnight though, right?
That was a non-overnight, because the overnight,
Okay.
we had
Oh, yeah,
the
no, I
police
see.
department and the fire department. I think if it's just an activity that's gonna happen during the evening, but not throughout the evening, not into the morning.
I guess I would
think-
say that any organized activity should be given approval, no matter what time of day. Like, so say somebody wanted to do a tracking class, and they were going to have 30 people, but it was during the day. I think we'd want to be notified and give approval for that as well.
Yeah, I'd rather say any organized group activities must be reviewed for approval by the commission.
Okay, yep, agreed.
So we should take it out of this overnight section though. Because this is
And
all
then that would go into 2.5,
right.
which is any activities that are to take place in part or whole on these properties by an organized group of people must be reviewed for approval by the commission.
Right.
this is one where in the base document, one of the ads, I think this is from legal, Bob, you would know. It relates to proof of insurance liability coverage required in the amount deemed sufficient by the commission. So
So,
we need to pick that up.
Rich, I'll get back to you in a second, Carl.
Okay.
I think 2.1.1 was maybe put in there because of the restriction with 1 hour after sunset to 1 hour before sunrise. Is that maybe?
Yes.
Okay. So we kind of covered that when we opened it up 24 hours.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I think we can take out 2.1.1.
Yep. We can just remove it, I think.
And then I think
Actually, if we're gonna, if we want, we can get rid of
2.1.2.
2.1.2 and just any organized activities under 2.5.
Yep.
So these, yeah.
So,
So 2.1.3 becomes 2.1.1. Then the two prior go
overnight
away.
camping?
Yep.
Yep. So that stays, but it just becomes 2.1.1.
Right.
And the 2.1.1 comes out.
Delete.
Yep. And then that one just becomes 2.1.1.
I love it.
Shorter the better.
Yep.
And keep going, Rich. You're on a roll.
So where did we leave off? So we went through basically all of the excluded activities.
Did we go through
Activities that are not-
Weren't we
2.2?
talking about events?
Activities, no activities are allowed that are not in full compliance with all state, local, and federal law. Pretty self-explanatory, but it's a good catch-all.
Yep.
Then the commission reserves the right. So 2.1 we've taken care of. 2.2 we can broaden in the land and trail stewardship. 2.3 I haven't had a chance to go back and see if we have to have a SAM permit, but if I'm wrong, then I would agree with Jack that snowmobiles must have a valid registration and active SAM permit.
Actually, this, Carl, did we close out the events, group activities?
Well, that was 2.5, so we haven't really quite gotten there yet.
Oh, okay, great. So the answer is no. Thank you, Richard.
So at this point, just because it may become a point of contention, we'll just skip 2.4 where we're making progress. 2.5, any activity. Oops, sorry.
I said thank you again.
Go ahead.
2.5, any activities that are to take place in part or in whole on these properties by an organized group of people must be reviewed for approval prior by the commission.
Rich?
Yeah.
I know in the past we've shied away from any fundraising kind of activities on the property. Should that be noted in there?
Well, I mean, it just says any activity.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of is any activity.
I guess, what have we shied away from fundraising activities?
Well, we really haven't. The only ones that really come to mind are the Snowmobile Club has a poker run using the trail system. I believe there's a horse group annually that comes in and uses the trail system for their horse group.
Yep.
And
But we haven't excluded anything, I don't think, have we?
nothing that I can think of in recent memory. No. I know we did have a review, but I think they actually filed an RDA for the up on Holman Street. I forget what they call themselves. They had their little concert in there by the river.
Oh, yeah.
The Tenderness Group.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess,
we haven't denied anybody, but we do want to make sure that it's, they have adequate parking, they have adequate facilities. It's an appropriate use of the property.
Can we bring up commercial activities and just have a quick discussion about that?
Sure.
Because I know
It's up to Bob.
there's been.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that.
So, I know I brought it up in the past, and I think we received a letter about it. Just as an example, the goat people have been doing, goat walks, and they charge for them. Is that something that we want to allow or we don't want to allow? Like a commercial activity that is using our land.
Well, I think like in the base document, it addresses both organized and commercial events. So I don't know that we should differentiate. I think they all should come before the commission.
Okay.
I think the other thing to think about is, shouldn't they also need to go to the BOS for an event? Shouldn't all events go through that process? And then, they tend to worry about the safety and the facilities and so forth. So if they've been through that event permit process, then that would cover
I don't think they need, why would they need an event permit? To do like a horseback ride, you need a permit from the selectmen?
Where that line is drawn is a pretty gray line in terms of the selectmen, in terms of what,
I'm opposed to start trying to take and solve the problems of other boards and commissions in our rules.
Yeah, I don't think, if the land is under our care, and this has been the debate that we've been going back and forth with. If the land is under our care, custody and control, then we have the right to say what happens on that land.
Well, that's not true of a private resident.
Yeah, I guess to Carl's point, if they have to go before the BOS, they still have to come before us prior to receive our approval to use the property first and foremost. To go to the BOS is putting the cart before the horse. So we, as the custodians of the property, want to make sure that the activity that they are proposing, we feel is appropriate for the properties. Then, as any private citizen would have to do, if it falls under the purview of the Board of Selectmen, they would have to further go to the Board of Selectmen. But I don't know if we necessarily want to merge the processes together. I think their overview is going to be far stricter than ours.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting we merge it. I'm just saying that we shouldn't, and maybe this falls under the general they have with all other requirements. But they should certainly come to us. I would say you go to BOS first, then come to us and say, it's a done deal. But we certainly wouldn't want to give permission and have it be that they say, well, we got permission, we did it, and then a mess.
I think we're covered when it says they have to comply with all other local, state, and federal laws. Up in section
1.76.
1.6.
Okay.
Um,
And I think we would treat it just like we would any other application that requires approval from multiple boards in town.
yeah, that's.
I'm sure somebody would mention that to them.
Hey, Ken, were you asking the question that basically if someone has an alpaca farm, right, and says
Yeah.
spend a day with an alpaca, and part of the day is to be, literally going out in the trails and walking the trails, and they're earning money by doing that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're the question you were asking?
That's exactly what I'm asking, because that's what's happening.
Yeah. And so do they have to come to us for a permit to do that? And do we want to allow it, I guess?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly the
Agreed.
question I was asking. Yes,
Right.
they should come before us, but that's, and I think hopefully we've addressed that with the people that are doing it, and they'll come before us, but, yeah.
I mean, I agree that shouldn't be happening unless the commission has said, yes, we'll allow that. That's a business organization making money, and if we're going to allow them to do that, if that's going to happen, they should have our permission.
Right.
Yeah, and that's basically the same requirement that was in the old, or in the existing regulations. Organizing commercial events on conservation lands which charge fees or raise or collect funds for any purpose are not allowed without commission approval.
Right. So I think that's fine, as long as,
Right, yeah, so that,
the board is under the agreement that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's in there. Is it clear enough in there?
Any activity that takes place in part or in whole on these properties by an organized group of people must be reviewed for approval.
Yeah.
I mean, we can certainly wordsmith it if you feel the need.
That would work, Rich.
what about, because in the base document, again, the one of legal's inputs, what they inserted was related to liability coverage for organized events. Do we want to carry any of that forward?
Well, Carl, I go back to my statement. I'm going to send this off to legal again. Let's just see what he has to say.
So we don't think we need to have liability coverage.
I didn't say that. I'm sure legal. I'm very confident. I mean, we could try and figure out what Adam would say about this, but I'd rather just wait and see what Adam has to say.
So can we have a quick discussion about that, though?
Go ahead, Ken.
So going back to what Rich said, say we have a group of astronomers that wants to go out and look at a comet, and they want to go out at midnight on a Saturday night, and they're going to have 30 people with 10 telescopes. Are we going to require them? And it's not an organized group, it's just, they're going to invite people on a Facebook event or something like that. Are we going to make somebody have a liability policy to do an event like that?
I don't think so.
If I could, legal didn't think so either. If legal's words were proof of insurance liability coverage in the amount deemed sufficient by the commission in its sole discretion, which means the amount could be zero.
Okay, so we don't need to put anything in there then,
Well,
right?
I'm with Bob. We can kind of put some of these questions along with that line when Bob presents it to legal to see what they think. Because I'm sure
Because then on the other hand,
there's
if
certain
it's gonna be
exemptions as it is.
A mountain, yeah.
As it is open space and passive recreation, I'm sure there are exemptions built into users of this property.
what was your point you were going to make, Ken?
No, because on the other hand, to take it to the other extreme, we're gonna allow a mountain bike race, and there's going to be 200 mountain bikers in the woods, then I think we would want them to have some sort of a liability policy. So I think,
Absolutely, and we would,
so I think that should be at our discretion.
yeah,
And honestly, Ken, that example you just used, I would have a hard time allowing because I don't think that's passive recreation.
Right. So I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah.
that's
so
not an
come before
organized
us
group
and-
just out for the enjoyment of being outdoors. I mean, that's a competition at that point. That's
Right.
not an unorganized sport.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a case by case basis.
Right. Okay.
All right, we're ready to move forward, Bob.
please.
Okay, so that brings us to the conservation land and trail stewardship, which was kind of, you had added most of it. So if there's things that you want to add, just I'll stop me and you can type them in.
Well, the only thing is, I had something in there about encroaching vegetation. A lot of times you have trails and the brush and the branches growing in from the sides, need to be trimmed back, to keep the trail open. And so I had encroaching in vegetation as in addition to down trees or limbs.
Okay,
I wouldn't have a problem adding that in that 3.11.
right.
Down trees or limbs and encroaching vegetation. And vegetation encroaching trails may be removed.
I guess my only thought was just a brief phone call to Matt, just to let him know what they're looking to do. If it's something that somebody is aware of, they've come across it more than once and have intent to go back out there again with tools. I don't think it's much of a stretch to just have them call the office and said, "Hey, Matt, I'm planning to go out on this trail here," because Bob's going to have all those awesome sign markers, so they'll know exactly where they are. And then Matt can give them the go ahead and just mark it and let somebody know that's out there watching it. My only fear was one person's encroachment is another person's enjoyment. So I'd hate to have somebody just out there clearing back 6 feet so they can get their snowmobile broomer through or anything like that. That was my thought on having them contact Matt.
Or you could say something about, instead of encroaching vegetation, overhanging trails or something like that. Because I mean, I don't think taking 2 or 3 branches down with a pair of loppers that's overhanging the trail really needs Matt's approval.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my only fear was, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Especially towards the
Hey,
stream.
guys, I just noticed that under 3.1, Conservation Commission is the word commission is used twice.
Aha, that's why. I was trying to figure out why.
Yeah, it reads the Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Maybe it was a subcommittee.
I'm happy with it the way it is. I don't want to take and create bureaucratic impediments to trail maintenance. To legitimate trail maintenance. But I'm wide open to listen to what other people. I know where Richard feels about this. How do other people feel about it?
So Bob, the only comment I did have was you had previously mentioned going out with equipment and posts and beams and things like that. And as the custodians of the property, the commission always has the right to go out on the property as they see fit for improvements and repair. And if such is needed, we can always apply for an RDA for the activities on the property, but the commission doesn't need to follow the regulations as far as maintenance and repair of the property.
Okay. I take it you thought my list of invasive plants was excessive and we can just do the commission encourages the removal of invasive plant species by hand or using non-powered hand tools. I like that. It's a lot simpler.
Yep, yeah, and I mean, I have some ulterior motive because I am wholly against the listings and classifications of invasive plant species as they have it in Massachusetts, so.
Okay, well, and basically I'm only worried about multiflora rose, oriental bittersweet, and honeysuckle.
Which honestly, you could walk those properties for the rest of your days, Bob, and never eradicate those plants from the properties,
Yep.
so. But no, I'm all in favor of keeping the trails open, keeping them off the trails.
Approval to reroute trails. Any other comments about 3.0? And then we come to enforcement.
I believe the $100 a day was in line with what legal had recommended, and we
It's
can
what's
do
in
that
line
under Chapter
with-
40, Section 8C.
Bingo. Absolutely correct.
And we also direct enforcement to the police and fire departments,
Yep.
which I believe again was the language that legal had put in.
So let's talk about hunting. Unless somebody wants
Bob,
to talk about something
before we
else
go into that controversial, that we were going to get back to dogs. I don't see anything about the dogs.
first. Yep.
Where do you think we should put dogs, Rich?
So my first thought on dogs, does the town already have language for dog control and dog custody on public lands?
I don't know. That would require some research.
Okay, again, I'm just not in favor of duplicating language that occurs elsewhere in town.
I do think we should put something in there that says, you can take dogs on on conservation property.
I do too.
So
So if we
Yeah, I
went
kind of
to,
agree too. Yeah.
maybe if we took number 1.6, Bob, and added language that dogs are not allowed on this property that are not under direct control of their owners, and that owners must clean up after their dog.
I'd be in favor of adding like another bullet here, not try to append it to 1.6.
Well, there is no 1.6, so it would be its own bullet.
Oh,
Bob changed it.
Oh,
you're not
okay.
looking-
So you're gonna have to add a 1.8.
Well, 1.61.
Well, yeah, because it wouldn't fall under 161, but
Yeah, no, I would add a 1.8.
yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, but
I
it's,
would.
Well, the last two lines should be no activity allowed. It's not in compliance, and the commission reserves
Yep.
right. So
yep.
should probably reline them. So 1.6 is no uncontrolled dogs or dogs that are not cleaned up after by their masters or owners or companions or whatever we call them these days.
Yeah, I looked up, there is in the town bylaw, under the definition of public nuisance, they talk about dogs. So that is covered at that level. They don't talk cleaning up after them. So we would need to cover that. And they talk about when a dog's permitted to run at large and unrestrained on property other than its own, it's considered a public nuisance.
The only time a dog's a problem is when it runs into another dog and the two owners have to figure out how to keep them from killing each other half the time.
Without getting bitten themselves.
Yeah.
All
Why don't
right.
we bring them out?
So,
That kind of dog.
Yeah, I don't know what the best way to word that is.
this is what I copied out of the other out of our current regs as amended, dogs should be deemed, I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
So what do we want it to say? Dogs,
No dog shall be allowed on property that is not in direct control by their owner and not cleaned up after by their owner. Or what, not being a dog owner, I don't know what you call it, scooping the poop.
Blue bag.
Yep.
It's assumed that you take the dog out there, you need to be bringing a blue bag back with you because you know what they're going to do. That's why they go there. You know,
You'd be surprised, Jack.
Yeah.
I know, but that's the problem.
Yep.
And then I find at the end of some of the trails, it's just piles of blue bags or pink bags.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
That's what I was going to say. We just went for a walk on conservation land and saw a pile.
Oh, yeah.
so I have trouble using the word owner here. No dog should be allowed that's not in direct control of their owner, or we need something other than owner. It's like, what if it's a dog walker or something, or
Caretaker, maybe?
Controller,
Take it,
direct control. Just leave it there, Bob, under direct control.
Yeah, I mean, the town bylaw uses dog owner.
Yeah.
But it might not be the owner. You're right. It might be the dog walker that's taking the dog for walking the town's conservation land. So
So just no dog shall be allowed that's not under direct control, period.
You could add the words or owner's designee.
Thank you. Dale says he uses a litter box. He doesn't need anybody scooping his
He
poop.
does not.
Nope. Right, Dale. Say hi,
Well,
Katie.
technically, you'd scoop his poop.
Hi, Katie. Yeah, that's Michelle's job.
You don't
I
have
provide him with a box to live in.
Is
She
Michelle
provides him with a
listening?
box to poop in.
do we want to put this thing about the removing poop?
yes,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah, that was the whole reason for having a dog exemption.
yeah, the person accompanying the dog shall promptly remove feces deposited by the dog on the conservation permission.
Like
land.
that.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Oh, you put a lot of thought into that one, Ken.
Yeah.
No, that's Bob just imported it from the other document.
Okay.
Now, are we going to go with Rich's suggestion and entitle that particular provision "Scooping to Pooping"?
The scooping to pooping. Scooping to pooping.
Anything else before we talk about hunting?
Just one last thought.
Yes, sir.
We don't seem to have, because this is sort of outside of the wetland, within all of our other wetland things, there's, at the bylaw level, there is an ability to have a process for changing regulation, which we implemented and, is in place with the hearings and so forth. This document, I don't see anything above this in the bylaws that references, this situation other than the state law. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be helpful to have similar language in the document that identifies the change process and use the same one we use for the wetland.
I don't understand what you're driving at, Carl. You want us to say we need to have a public hearing or something like that, or?
I'm proposing we take the change process that is part of the bylaw for the wetland act, for the wetland regulations, and we put that into this document to define the change process for this, which is basically the process we're using, where you define, we could take that exact language, I think, and,
The change
Very
process
familiar
in the bylaw says it should be taken up at 2 public hearings that are televised.
yeah, there's this, yeah, it's the whole seat. All I'm saying is there's nothing anywhere that says that provides the process for modifying this document. So we've been using that model that we use on the wetland regulation then that's great. Everybody would do that in the future, but why not document that and have it part of this, that there's a, that there's a consensus document, then there's a public hearing advertised, the public hearing, whether it's 1, 2, or whatever, we can decide. But I'm just suggesting that we should have in this document, because I don't know anywhere else to put it, the change process, and that a public hearing is required in order to change this document.
How do people feel about that?
I would agree. Load that in there.
I agree also, but anybody else have any comment about that?
My only concern with that, Mr. Chair, and I certainly have no issues with putting in that these regulations may be changed from time to time at an open public hearing.
Yeah.
But we do have direction in Chapter 40, Section 8C, that from time to time, the commission can develop regulations for the use of the property.
Yep.
So I don't know if we can make them more restrictive than that. But again, I certainly have no problem with putting it in there. And if legal says no, legal says no.
If
I
I
don't know
may,
if I would make it quite as restrictive as we did for the wetland regulations. I think just to have one public hearing session is
Yeah.
sufficient.
Yeah, one hearing. I agree with that.
Bless you.
I mean, look,
This year.
if I may, before we continue on that particular issue, this particular set of regulations is generated under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C. Our bylaw strictly addresses wetland protection only. It does not address any type of bylaw with the use of our open space or land under our care and control. So you can't promulgate a set of regulations on a bylaw if there's nothing in a bylaw authorizing that promulgation. Promulgation here is authorized under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C, also known as the Conservation Commission Act. So you're adding in a bylaw reference where there's no bylaw.
no, Matt, that's exactly my point. There is no place to put this other than within this document. The process for change.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think, I think we should put it in here.
Yeah. I don't think it has any authority on how the commission decides to change the regulation because we already have it stated, but certainly for posterity, hopefully to follow in our footsteps of openness, we can add it as the last Section 5.
Yeah, exactly, Richard. It's a good point. And that's why it's unfortunate it's no high level document, but because the commission doesn't have to even, commission can change this without that. But it provides some guidance for the future.
This is what the website says. This is what
I can't remember.
what I got here. This is what it says in the bylaw that was adopted at the town meeting in 2016.
But the problem, and Matt stated, Bob, that the bylaw has no bearing on this regulation because we are operating under the authority of Chapter 40, Section 8C. We're not acting under 131, Section 40.
I fully understand that, but I applaud Carl's thought that we put in here, that we make a commitment to the public that if we're going to change these regulations, we're going to hold a public hearing.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, so I think everything you did, Bob, is great. We just get rid of those references to the, right? And this is just a paragraph on.
Do we want to say over 2 regularly scheduled meetings, both hearings will be televised, or we just want to say will be scheduled and will be scheduled, period?
Yeah, I think we should just say will be scheduled, period. And
Yeah,
Will be
just- yeah,
scheduled.
so there's only one.
yeah.
A formal will be scheduled and the hearing will be televised.
Yep.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Notice of the hearing.
Do we want to restrict ourselves to 10 business days?
Would probably leave it open.
I don't know why we have to take in, I mean, we have nothing driving us. I'm advocating that we just take and do this. The Conservation Commission will establish something like
Yeah. I think that's
when
good.
adopting rules and regulations, the Conservation Commission will establish a draft of proposed changes, blah, blah, blah. Do it something like this.
Well, I mean, if you want to cover it, you could just add the sentence in accordance with the open meeting law.
Yeah, this is kind of above and beyond the open meeting law, though, I think.
Yes.
Well, if you're gonna advertise a hearing and you're gonna do it at a scheduled meeting, then by the way you guys conduct your own meetings, it goes under the open meeting law. So yeah, it could be implied. So
Take that. So what I put here is I appended to Richard's original sentence about the Conservation Commission under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C, may adopt rules and regulations governing the use of land under its control. When adopting rules and regulations, the Conservation Commission will establish, when adopting land use rules and regulations, the Conservation Commission will establish a draft of proposed changes during regular posted open meetings. Once there is a consensus on the proposed changes, a formal hearing will be scheduled and the hearing will be televised.
Like it.
Perfect.
Thank you, Bob.
Looks good to me.
All right. Anything else?
There are a couple things. Smoking is prohibited. Is that addressed? That was in the previous document.
We want to prohibit smoking?
No.
Okay. And then alcoholic beverages in glass containers are prohibited. That was in the previous document too.
I honestly think that may be addressed in the bylaw, the town bylaw.
Is it? Okay.
You know, I thought I remember reading something about alcoholic beverages on public property.
Okay.
I think it's
can-
against the alcohol is against the law to have it in
Yeah.
public.
Public places.
That's
it?
an open container.
Okay. And then I looked up the pass for the snowmobiles and it is required. You can actually get a ticket by the environmental police if you don't have that.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Can we go
Okay.
back to smoking?
Absolutely.
We have it in the bylaw now
Yes.
or in the rules right now?
The previous document, yeah, it's in there. Smoking is prohibited.
I think we should include that in this one, personally.
Katie, how do you feel about that?
I agree.
I would agree. You get fires otherwise.
Yeah.
Um,
And litter.
Good
Uh,
litter, yeah.
Carl,
I agree.
Rich,
Honestly, I think you could write 3 pages of draft legislation on smoking and it's not going to change one person's mind if they're going to smoke on that property or not. I think it's just redundant.
Yeah, Jeff,
I'm all for eliminating smoking. No smoking, prohibited.
Jeff,
Yeah, I kind of agree with Rich as well. If they're going to smoke, they're going to do it. But I think it's probably a good thing to have in the document somewhere. Yeah.
where is it in the original document?
It's 2.6, fires, grills, and fuel stoves are prohibited. And then it says smoking is prohibited.
Just before nudity.
That went away, didn't it?
I was just trying to identify stuff that was in the other document, but
So we're just gonna do smoking? We're not gonna do fires, grills, and fuel stoves? We're just gonna do smoking?
I think so. I mean, if I want to go out and have a picnic and have a little camp stove, boil water to make soup or something.
Yep.
I think smoking is fine.
The other one I didn't see was the issue of the pellet guns, paint guns, BB guns.
Yeah,
Haven't
that
talked
too.
about that yet.
Okay.
We're leaving the best for last, Rich. I mean, yeah, Jack, sorry.
Stay for it before we get to the real.
That's otherwise known as the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Too true, Ken. Too true.
So Rich proposes allowing hunting with firearms on some town lands, on some conservation lands. Let's go around, do a straw poll, see how people feel about this. Ken, how do you feel about it?
I am in favor of allowing firearm hunting on some pieces of property, not necessarily the ones on this document.
I understand. Rich, I'm assuming you're in favor since you wrote it.
Yeah, certainly. And
Carl, how do you feel about it?
I'm not in favor of extending it based on all of the inputs we've got. Way more from people who were not happy about it than people that are. If we did extend it, my feeling is that we should, at the same time, if we're going to establish a greater area for people to be able to use to hunt, that we should restrict all hunting to those areas. Meaning bow hunting would be not allowed anywhere, but within those areas we designate as hunting. But I'm against it the way it is right now.
Jeff,
Yeah, I think bow hunting should still remain as it is. And then I think firearm hunting is a passive outdoor recreational sport, and I think it should be allowed on some properties that we do have.
Katie,
Am I muted? No. Cool. I am in favor of allowing firearm hunting on one additional town property, and ideally one that would be connected to other state land. That piece of property to be determined.
there we have it. I have not been in favor of allowing hunting, but I am committed that there's 4 people who are in favor of 4 other people who are in favor of allowing hunting on some lands. I will work to support it and implement it. It sounds like there's 4 people, Katie, Ken, Jeff, and Rich. Katie, is there any wiggle room for your one land parcel versus more than one parcel?
Yeah, like I can explain where I'm coming from. So I kind of gone back and forth on this issue in my mind pretty much this whole time. I see both viewpoints. I think that to greater increase the amount of land that can be utilized. So I think including a property that abuts state land will help. The hunters have a larger area to go on. They have more areas around between Lunenburg and other towns to use. But I think to appease kind of everyone, make a little compromise, I think one additional town property besides Hunting Hill should be allowed. Kind of my opinion.
if I might, Katie, I just would ask you to consider, so there are 2 parcels that fit that bill that you have just described. One is Small Town Forest,
Yeah.
which is actually a contiguous piece of Hunting area with Hunting Hill.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
Hunting Hill is a piece that that's part of a larger wildlife conservation area that
Yep.
extends into Shirley and into Townsend. And the Townsend parcel that abuts Hunting Hill also abuts Small Town.
Okay.
So in that respect, it's just an extension of a current piece. And the only other piece that fits that is up in off of Howard Street, which is designated the Northwest Conservation Area.
Yeah.
So that abuts on two sides, the Willard Brook State Park, which I did actually have a conversation today with Marion Larson, who is the Chief Education and Informational Officer for the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. So she would certainly be interested in talking more with the commission and the general public as well, to try to keep some of the lands open for hunters and of course for control of the wildlife population.
Is she the one that sent
'Cause
the
that is-
email?
Yes, yeah, because I did
Yeah.
talk with her a little more today about some of the parcels and if she had any ideas, and she said she'd be more than willing, her and the biologist, to talk more
Yeah.
with us.
I thought that was very informative, her email to Matt.
Yep. Yeah, and
So-
she's been on both sides of the issue as
Yeah.
far as she has been a game warden, an environmental patrol officer, an EPO.
Yeah.
So she's been in the law enforcement part of it, and then she's been in the educational part of it. But
Okay.
I would ask you if you could to consider two parcels, the Small Town and the Northwest, as both of those border the larger wildlife conservation areas.
Okay. Yeah. I think, yeah, I'm willing to consider that. I think, I don't know if we're deciding all that tonight or if we're waiting for more public input.
Yeah.
I need to give that a little bit of
And
thought.
I did have just a quick comment for Carl, where he did bring up that we've had plenty of conversation and comment from the public. Someone would have to explain to me how, a couple dozen for comments and a dozen, or a couple dozen against comments and a dozen for comments all of a sudden dictates a majority voice in a town of 10,000 people. So I don't think we've necessarily heard a for or against from anywhere close to a majority of users or of townspeople. So I think there's a fair amount that just go along with our decision.
So,
Mr. Chairman?
Jack Rabbit,
Yeah, if I might. I don't believe we should move ahead with any kind of hunting until we've got a pile of little trivial issues taken care of, like what will we hunt? How long is the season going to be? Are we allowing them to shoot coyotes? Are we allowing, those questions? How are we going to support this to, in terms of demarcating 500 feet away from homes? I mean, there's a lot of work that has to go into this, and I would support, by the way, if you're adding onto the small town forest and the abutters don't have a problem with it, I don't have a problem with it. And Rich, your point is real good in that, this is a town-wide question. And I think that, while we have been appointed and such, we don't represent the whole
Did I
town.
drop or Jack drop?
What's that? I'm still here.
I guess I dropped.
There you go. I know you're on the boat. So anyway, I really believe we need to bring this to the town. Right now, I'm not in favor of just opening the doors and saying, let's go hunt. I think that there has to be a lot of discussions with regard to what do we hunt and when can we do it. I agree. There are some things that we might want to allow herding, thinning of a herd, but for a general, let's just go hunt, I won't support that because I know where that takes you. And you're always retreating. Oh, well, you shoot all those coyotes. And anyway, we need to talk about that stuff. And so I don't have a problem with being selective, but I can tell you what, I've, like everybody else, has received a ton of feedback and don't even think about the Lane property. But I'm kind of like with Katie, as long as we do it really safely, have the ability to make sure that people aren't shooting into people's homes and things like that with demarcation. And that I'm kind of okay with it. I'm not a big fan of just opening something up like this. And so therefore I would say no, I'm not going to vote it until we get those resolved.
Thank you, Jack. So right now, what I modified Rich's thing to say, small town forest in the Northwest conservation area. Although I thought it was called Northwest Town Forest.
Yeah, I guess whatever it's called, it should be
Yep.
referenced in here.
I thought I grabbed that from the open space plan.
And you might well have, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to do this for now.
I just add something in here too.
Sure.
Under Mass General Laws, Chapter 269, Section 12F, it is illegal to discharge a firearm within 500 feet of a dwelling without the owner's permission. You could face 3 months imprisonment for a conviction of illegal discharge of weapons and fines. So you can't, hunters are supposed to know that, and you cannot discharge a firearm within 500 feet of a residence or dwelling.
So Jeff, how
Just
do
to
they
add that.
know in terms of, if there's a lot of foliage and something comes trotting by, how do they know that they might be within 500 feet?
The onus is
Believe it or
on
not,
them.
there's many apps right now that hunters
Yeah.
use, and it shows all the property lines and it shows all the dwellings. And that's what I've seen that most hunters use to be safe. And in my experience hunting, it is very safe. You don't want to be put in that position where you're
Right.
behind the wrong side of the law, because they take it very seriously. And all hunters know that. If you're in the woods, you need to know exactly where you are.
Right.
at all times.
Oh my
So
God.
what is about the notification process with regard to the abutters to make sure that kids don't go out and play in the woods?
Well, that's on private property, so we'd be allowing that
Yeah, well,
on these lands that we're discussing.
there are a lot of homes in some of these properties that are bordering
Jack,
properties.
Not
Yeah.
the ones that we're discussing.
Jack,
Walltown Forest?
Jack.
Yeah, Bob.
We got
I'm-
4 people on the
Let's keep
commission.
going. We're not going into public discussion yet.
I understand that, okay, but we've got 4 people on the commission who said that they would be in favor of allowing hunting with firearms in small town forest in the Northwest Town Forest. And that's what I modified the draft to say.
And can I make one other change?
Absolutely.
Where it's in bold, it says 2.4 hunting with firearms is allowed by licensed individuals only on the following properties that abut state land where hunting is allowed.
Okay, well, first of all, we have to add Hunting Hills up here where it says small town forest. We have to add Hunting Hills up there.
Well, it's in
Actually-
2.4.1.
Yeah, I had written that as a standalone exemption, Bob. Because as you go through 2.4, we only allow certain properties, and then in bold, currently while the commission allows hunting with firearms on these properties, the use of firearms must be consented to by the Board of Selectmen. That statement does not hold for section 2.4.1.
Because
And
it's
I went
allowed by
into the description as to why that doesn't hold for section 2.4.1.
because it's allowed by right under the deed.
Well, and I'm cautious using the term by right. It is allowed under a conservation restriction between the town of Lunenburg, the town of Shirley, and the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife.
And so I asked Adam Costa about that. If you're taking a look at the last my last set of legal questions I sent to Adam Costa, and
Yeah.
he gave a written response.
And what did it say?
And I asked him, could the selectmen does the bylaw still hold on the Hunting Hills land where people that have to hunt there need the permission of the selectmen?
No.
And I thought his answer said yes.
His answer
they-
could say yes, but the
But they-
town signed into an agreement with the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife to allow all legal forms of hunting on that property. I don't see how the town can further restrict a conservation restriction that they signed into on that property. So whether he maybe didn't have a copy of the restriction,
He had a
but
copy.
I know myself, if I was representing the state and the town wanted to renege on their conservation restriction, I would fight that.
He also said he said they couldn't say no. He did lawyer language. He said they couldn't say no, but the people would still have to ask and get permission. Let me
Yeah,
see.
I guess I'd need to see that a little bit more in writing and make sure he has all the facts. Because I was also told by the Marion Larson that the state-owned land in Lunenburg, the town cannot restrict firearm hunting on that parcel either.
Which
Well,
one?
just like private property, they can't restrict hunting on either.
Hey, Rich, what was that other property? I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
The state owns a piece of property up in the northwest corner that abuts our property and abuts the, or it's part of the Willard Brook
Part of
State
Willard Brook.
Forest.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if we're to add this language, under what condition, I mean, to Jack's point, I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions to be answered. What year-round hunting, under what conditions, marked, unmarked, what are we going to do? So I guess the first question be, what is the, what season hunting, or are we allowing all hunting all year round?
I guess I would put it forth as all legal forms of hunting as described by the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. That's already regulated by the state of Massachusetts.
So that's all year round?
Would depend on what game you were going after, but yes.
Yes, yeah, but you'd be able to hunt all year round.
Yep. And as people start to get this, the stigma of hunting, Marion did give me a couple other stats. In 30 years, there have only been 3 accidents in the state of Massachusetts that involve non-hunters with hunters. And there have been no fatalities, hunting fatalities in the state of Massachusetts in over 30 years. So, I mean, people tend to talk about safety a little bit. And I think that tends to be a little more emotional than a little more logical.
I'd like to stick to not debating the merits of hunting. I'd like to stick to the language that we're proposing here.
All right, I would put it forth that all legal forms of hunting are allowed on those 2 properties.
Because there's nothing that restricts what you can hunt on Hunting Hill, is there? Or what seasons are open?
Yeah, again, the conservation restriction is for all legal forms of hunting.
So, I mean, you may be up there hunting upland game, birds, in whatever season that's in, and then deer hunting in December, right?
Yep.
So I would say the same would hold true for those other pieces of property as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, hunting is fairly restricted as it is now, and there aren't issues that we've had or people can point to on our properties or in the Commonwealth. So, I think some of this overburdening duplication of restrictions that already exist tends to get a little monotonous. And again, I'm a hunter. I've hunted my whole life. Lots of people I know have. I mean, we take this privilege very seriously. We are very responsible gun owners. We are very responsible when we're in the woods. And obviously, by the lack of any issues that anybody can point to with fact, I think most hunters tend to be that way. Just like most snowmobilers, most dog owners, most bicyclists, most hikers. Everybody's out there trying to share these properties as best they can and with respect for everybody else that's using them. no one group is out there saying, this is our property, you can't use it, interacting rudely with everybody else that wants to try to use it. So I think in some respect, we're looking for issues that aren't out there.
I'd like to propose that we add a new sentence somewhere that says that bow hunting is allowed on all conservation lands.
What time of the year?
As allowed by state regulations.
As allowed by state
Jack.
regulations.
It's because that's what we're allowing. We're not reinventing the wheel here.
Yeah, that's already allowed, right?
Yeah, I understand it, but it's not. Ken, how do you feel about that?
No, I think that's a good idea. It needs to be documented that it is allowed, and that's not a change to the current regulation.
Carl, how do you feel about that?
But, it's the same as we have today, right?
Yeah. Jack, how do you feel about that?
Sure, go ahead. Bow hunting is tough, but it's needed.
Jeff, how do you feel about that?
Yep, that sounds good.
Katie?
Sounds good.
Bob, if I might, where in the letter with Adam did you bring that up on the conservation restriction?
It should have been, let's go back, Rich, and look in communications.
Yeah,
Would have been like maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago.
the one from 1216.
Maybe. I sent him a bunch of questions, and one of the questions was, could we eliminate the reference to the bylaw in our regs? Could the town, I asked the question, could the Board of Selectmen say no to someone who asked to hunt in Hunting Hill? And I thought he answered that question. That they couldn't say no, but they still, the selectmen could say, you have to ask, which to me seemed ridiculous, but I think that's what he said.
Do they have the right to exclude, you can hunt, of course you can hunt with a bow, but does it say you can discharge a firearm in the document that, when we bought
Yes, any legal form of hunting.
illegal form hunting? Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to read through it because I don't happen to see.
And I could be wrong, Rich, but I have a fairly, I think I have a fairly clear memory of that, but, I am 72 years old, so you never know about my memory.
Join the club.
So what does it say right now in our current regs about bow hunting? It says on bow hunting is allowed in all conservation land consistent with mass law or something like that, or what does it say?
It says hunting by bow is allowed on all conservation lands in accordance with the state laws and the town bylaws. And then there's a reference that outdated, I don't know, Article 9, Section 2. It's 2.14 in the current reg.
Okay. So I wrote bow hunting is allowed in all conservation land consistent with all Massachusetts,
Mass, state, and
Massachusetts law
town,
and regulations.
mass laws, town bylaws.
We don't have any bylaws on bow hunting that I know of.
I don't know, I'm just reading from the current regulation. It references the bylaws, so Article 9, Section 2. I'm sure when legal looks at this, they'll make it right.
So,
Actually, Bob,
yes, sir.
we do need to go back and exclude Hunting Hill from snowmobiling.
We do.
Yes, that is in the conservation restriction.
So,
So, under the restriction signed by the town, snowmobiles and any other motorized vehicle, except in the designated parking area, are prohibited.
so where is that in our current thing? It says,
Is it 2.5? 2.5? No, 2.3. Snowmobile.
so, I think I would just add snowmobiling is not allowed on Hunting Hills.
Yes, snowmobiles are not allowed on Hunting Hill.
And I'll get the actual
Name.
name.
Can you just put in accordance with the conservation restriction on that property or something like that?
Yep. How's that? Snowmobiles are not allowed in Hunting Hills in accordance with that property's conservation restriction.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
where we are discussing some restrictions, I do worry that unless we put a parameter around what is hunting season for what versus just whatever is regulated by the state laws, things like our small town forest will not be used unless you're going to wear an orange jacket. And I think that we should be able to at least create a hunting season that says, look, from whatever the period in November, you stay out of there or you're allowed to hunt. But I think we need to put some parameters around around what is hunting season in Lunenburg. And we make that determination. Otherwise, I was reading today with regard to what are the fears and what's associated with open carry versus concealed weapons. And I know in our discussions here, we were saying there were going to be no firearms. And I thought, well, you know what? Open carry creates all sorts of concerns and does disrupt harmony. Concealed weapons, not so much. But I think that we need to explore that, and for that matter, allow us the ability to say what can be hunted when, even on those other two properties that we're considering admitting. Otherwise, I think no one's going to want to use those properties. So what we've done is we've taken them out of circulation to the public.
Ken Jones, how do you feel about limiting either the season or the species hunted?
I guess, to take it one step further, I'm not in favor of limiting it beyond what's allowed by the state, because there's nothing that says you couldn't park at the parking area to the small town forest on Mulpus Road and carry your hunting weapon through the town property onto state property to hunt crows or coyotes or whatever was in season. So to me, it doesn't make any difference what is regulated. It should be regulated by what's in season by the state.
So
And,
you're not in favor of limiting the season or the species hunted?
No.
Rich, where do you stand on that?
Unless there is some overarching reason or fact that just because we've allowed hunting on these properties that people are going to shy away, I have no desire to try to regulate further than what the state of Massachusetts does as far as hunting.
Katie, how do you feel about this? Katie, you with us?
Yeah, she's thinking.
She's muted.
Sorry, I was muted because the
Or
dogs were
dogs.
going crazy. Yeah, I don't think there's any need to restrict further than what the state says.
Thank you, Katie.
You're
Carl?
welcome.
Yeah, I think there's a need to hunt year round, and I think that we should consider restricting it. I think that there are residents. We know that there are residents that having hunting on those properties are going to take those properties off the table for use by those residents. So I think the more we can restrict it, the less we'll be restricting it for our residents' use.
Jeff?
I think we've restricted it enough to the two extra parcels at this point. I don't see any further restrictions really being required.
Thank you, Jeff. Mike?
I'm just curious. This is a different question, but is there a lot of game that's available on all these hunting properties that we're talking about?
I would suggest most 99.9% of the interest will be deer.
Okay. Do we have numbers?
No.
No numbers. So we're not sure how many deer are being caught on a annual basis on properties in general, or?
Well,
I can answer that, Bob. I did have some information from Marion Larson from Divisions of Fishery and Wildlife. In 2019, there were over 71,000 hunting licenses issued in the state of Massachusetts. And she estimated for 2019, between 10 and 15% of those licensees did get a deer.
that's all?
That were the numbers she gave me, yes.
Wow. The people I know
What
are a
was the
lot more
number? I missed
successful than that.
What's that?
What was the number, Richard? I missed how many?
71,000 licenses, and between 10 and 15% of licensees got a deer.
Thank you, Richard. 10-15.
That would indicate there aren't a lot of deer running around. Either that or we got a bunch of bad.
Well, I mean, you say that, and more than a handful of car accidents in Lunenburg were caused by striking deer last year. So, I mean, that in itself is a safety issue without being able to control the population properly.
Okay.
Cost me $11,000.
Mike?
So, I mean, so there are other issues as far as trying to control the herd. And Marion Larson was open to coming to the commission at the next meeting and discussing it with the biologist.
Thank you, Rich. I'm going to go back to Mike. Mike, you never stated a position about limiting the season or not. What's hunted or not.
Personally, I understand there's a lot of interest in hunting, and I certainly don't want to make any more restrictions that have already been made. I'm glad to know which properties will potentially allow firearms. My only question is, will legal make any determination about any decision that the commission makes in
Well,
regards to firearm hunting?
well, I mean, right now, uh, yeah, we will submit this to legal, and,
Okay.
and he'll go through it. But as it was, our rules, our present rules ban the possession of firearms, and that's a major bone of contention with at least two members of the Board of Selectmen. And legal said we had the ability to ban the possession of firearms, but this draft doesn't do that, obviously. And so you know, but legal, we'll send this to legal, and legal will go through it and make all the comments, you know, that he wants to make.
Well, Mr. Chair, could we talk about that issue then, possession of firearms?
Of course we can.
Clearly on land that where hunting is not, you know, where we allow hunting, they can be possessed. But you're right, we've lost thread altogether. So I don't see why we should drop that possession, you know, banning the possession of firearms on property that's not open for hunting.
We should drop it because it's not constitutional. It's not, I don't think it's legal. I don't think it's constitutional, and I don't think it's legal, and I don't think it should be in there.
I would leave that up to legal, though. I would leave that up to legal.
The legal opinion on that was all over the place. You could interpret that 6 ways to Sunday, and he never really gives us a clear answer.
So clearly we don't know that it's unconstitutional.
Okay, gentlemen. The Board of Selectmen has asked that Adam prepare a formal legal opinion on this, and he is working on that. And at some point in the future, he's going to appear on a Board of Selectmen agenda where they're going to talk to him about this. And I suggest that we take that question up after that has occurred. I don't envision us being in a position to adopt these regulations for at least 2 more meetings. You know, we need to have a public hearing. I don't think they're ready for a public hearing yet. I want to take and you know, send them out back to Adam. I got to give him more than a week. I got to give him at least 3 weeks to take and go through these. Plus, I want to give all the commissioners a chance to go back and compare these, you know, carefully with our present regs to see, you know, what else is missing. Plus, I want to work on that application for overnight stuff. So,
okay, that makes sense, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Jack, you have your hand up?
If I did, I apologize. I didn't think it, but no, I think, Bob, I agree that this is a good logical step. Let's take a look at what we had before. Now we've got something to work with, and we can take our, you know, have another discussion on that stuff, and we can take our positions, and then if we disagree further, we'll figure out what we're going to do after that. There's a compromise in here someplace.
Carl, you raise your hand.
Yeah, just it sounds like we're pretty much done the detail here. So I'd like to talk a little bit in the point that Richard made. This is a pretty, as you can tell, just from the small sampling to his point. We've heard from about 40 people. My last count is about 40 people have written letters. You know, 34 of them in against increasing firearms, 6 in favor or didn't really stand even, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Can we use the time that you just said, because I think you're right, we're weeks away from you the hearing. Could we come up with a strategy of how to reach out to a larger public to get more people at least aware of what we're doing? And I know we'll advertise. I'm sure we'll do that. Perhaps in that advertisement we could somehow make sure people are aware of this, that this issue is this isn't just a normal regulation review. And let us know if you want a copy. I think this is such a big issue, and we should hear from more people and give them their opinion, that we should reach out and actually try to encourage people, to let people know what we're doing, so that they can participate and let us know if we're on the right track and on their benefit.
Could we go door to door and knock on people's doors and ask them, or where do we draw the line with that?
Well,
Well, go to town meeting and do a survey.
Mr. Chairman, we could, just when we advertise it, we could make it clear that that we could put this paragraph in, that this is one of the intentions of one of the more significant changes. We can identify significant changes, and if this is the only one, it's the only one. But I think we should put that in the advertisement. So,
I would say
so we don't have the door.
that when we're ready for a public hearing, which we're not yet,
Right.
that what I am advocating is that we take and we do another advertisement in the paper that says we have a revised regulation, and the revised regulations available on the website, and and we put it out there, 10 days in advance, get the ad in, have the revised regulation posted on the website. I have no doubt that there'll be a bunch of interested people who will do a great job of writing letters to the editor or putting on social media, how they feel about these issues. And we'll have no shortage of public attention. I don't think we need to reach out and beat the bushes, go door to door or anything else in order to inform the public. I think the public will become fully informed of this, so long as we do our part. And I think putting an ad in the paper, posting it on the website, and in the ad, calling people's attention to the fact that it is revised, will garner all the attention we need. Whoop, I have to admit somebody.
I understand what you're saying, and if it weren't for the experience, I would say that that's true. But we did get a pretty good response through those methods of 40 people, but we seem to want to discount that wasn't a significant sampling. So I don't know what the commissioners think is a significant sampling that it would take to sway us in a different
I don't
direction.
think anybody's discounting that it was a significant sampling. We heard from a small group of people. When it comes right down to it, it's a vote of the commission. So we can have public hearings and we can advertise it and we can let people know, and then we will take a vote.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think to Carl's point, at this point, we've been discussing our land use policy updates for months now. We have had scheduled hearings that have been advertised in the newspaper. There has been a significant campaign, as you stated, on social media. There were letters to the editor of the local newspapers that garnered comment. It's also been the subject matter at more than one selectmen's meeting. So I think all of those that care to participate, for the most part, have already participated or are aware of it. I know at the last meeting, I made a comment that my brother had talked to at least 30 residents and was called to the mat on why I didn't have that list in front of me. I have talked to several of those people, and unfortunately, at this point, they don't want to get involved with the state of politics as they are today. So I think we've been doing a very good job at trying to be as open and transparent as possible. I don't think that we should be treating this any differently than we did any of our other regulation meetings or regular application hearings at this point. I think that there's more than enough local talk about it that I'm not sure how else you would go about trying to garner people that aren't interested in their opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to say about the process going forward? Then it's my position as chairman that what I'm suggesting we do is I will email us out. I'll save this document that we've been working on. I'll email it out to all the members of the commission and to Matt. It's still a draft. We're not going to post it on the website yet. I want to take and have another work session. Probably not at the next meeting. The next meeting, we've already got 9 public hearings. I think we have 8 public hearings. Maybe we could do it at the, I'd rather wait till the meeting after the next one, to the first meeting in February. And discuss it then, send us out to legal, and go from there. And maybe shoot for a public hearing, the second meeting in February.
Mr. Chair, to that point, do you think it is helpful to invite the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife's education chief and a biologist from that division?
I frankly, Rich, am not interested in participating in having more people try to convince us one way or the other of the merits of hunting versus not hunting. I think people's minds are made up, and I don't think anyone's minds are going to be changed at this point. I personally am not interested. If a majority of the commission thought that would be fruitful, but I'm just afraid it's going to chew up a lot of our time, a lot of meeting time for no real positive, no real impact on the outcome. But that's just my personal feeling. If anyone has a different opinion, please raise your hand now.
Just to that point, I think that her response to Matt's email was helpful and it brought up a lot of good points, but I tend to agree that it probably wouldn't be fruitful to have them come to a meeting.
Well, if you have them come to a meeting, then we're gonna want to hear from, balanced presentation from, animal rights groups and stuff like that. I just,
Yeah.
How about something like a dueling editorials?
Oh, you're funny, Jack.
Yeah, no, I'm serious though. I'm serious.
That's the
I
problem.
will duel with Rich Birch any day of the week.
Okay.
Let's get off there, Rich. Let's grab the paper.
As long as you deal with logic and facts, Jack, I will argue with you any day of the week. As soon as you start getting emotional and talking about court cases in
but
Chicago and the due process of the United States Constitution, and that's when you start to get a little carried away, and it's not worth arguing with you.
Rich, just get me past January. We'll be all set.
All right. I'm looking, I think that's about it on the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So just a quick question, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just to verify what our mission is. We are tabling this discussion for the next meeting and are going to take it back up in a public session the first Wednesday in February.
The first Wednesday in February with the hope of being able to schedule a public hearing for the third Wednesday in February.
Okay, so the first meeting in February will again be just us discussing it amongst the commission members.
Yes, but it'll probably be part of a larger a larger meeting, where we have other items on the agenda. It won't be dedicated to just this.
Okay, so the public's comments, other than in writing, aren't going to be dealt with until the whatever it is, the 20th or whatever the third Wednesday is.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be amazed if we don't get people that don't get wind of this and they don't come and they don't try and, do all kinds of public comment at the beginning or at the end of the meeting or something like that when there's a time allowed. But I'm not interested in debating our regulations with members of the public that are passionate about it on both sides while we're adopting them, while we're drafting them. I don't think it's a good way to create regulations.
Thank you for your clarification.
All right, I'm looking for a motion. Anything else before I look for a motion to adjourn? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Ken Jones,
Aye.
Rich Birsch,
Aye.
Katie Childs,
Aye.
Carl Luck,
Aye.
Jack Rabbit,
Aye.
Jeff Viviano,
Aye.
and Mike LaRouche.
Aye.
All right, thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night,
guys.
everybody.
I know.